The warning unheeded. Prime Coordinator Zex Valor stood before the Xerillian Confederation Council, his scaled appendages moving with practiced precision across the holographic display. 23 representatives from the Confederation's founding species watched as the star map expanded to reveal a small blue-green planet on the spiral arm of an unremarkable galaxy. Esteemed council members, Zex Valor began, his voice resonating through the chamber's perfect acoustics. Our resource scouts have identified a world of exceptional potential, rich in rare elements, particularly the crystalline formations we require for our hyperspace network expansion. Initial surveys suggest deposits that could supply our needs for the next 3 centuries. The council chamber hummed with approval. The Xerillian Confederation had existed for over 15,000 years, uniting 34 sentient species across 7,000 star systems. Their technological supremacy was unquestioned, their social harmony the envy of lesser civilizations. But their expansion had stalled in recent centuries as key resources became scarce. What of indigenous life? Asked Representative Mokth of the Saurians, her reptilian features impassive in the chamber's dim light. A bipedal species that calls itself human, Zex Valor replied. Technologically primitive by our standards, they've barely left their own atmosphere with rudimentary chemical propulsion. They appear to be in an early industrial development phase, perhaps approaching nuclear capabilities. Standard Protocol 17 would apply. Minimal resistance expected. Elder Tholian, the oldest member of the council, stirred from his contemplative silence. The ancient Vidarian's translucent skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, a sign of concern among his kind. The designation triggers something in my memory, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Access the ancient archives. Search for reference. Human. The chamber fell silent as the central display shifted, ancient text scrolling in the oldest dialect of the Confederation. Words appeared, dating back nearly 7,000 years. Sector 42, System 3319, Planet 3. Species designation. Human. Threat assessment. Maximium. Directive. Absolute interference. By order of Prime Coordinator Valsheen. Elder Tholian's luminescence intensified. I remember now. Valsheen was my predecessor's predecessor. This warning bears the highest authority seal ever recorded in our history. Zex Valor's appendages twitched with annoyance. With respect, Elder, the Confederation of 7,000 years ago controlled barely 300 star systems. Their threat assessment protocols were rudimentary. What possible danger could a planetary-bound species pose to our current might? Shentak, military strategist, projected a simulation onto the display. I concur with the Prime Coordinator. Our current capabilities would allow us to neutralize any resistance within hours. One battle group would be sufficient. The warning stands, Elder Tholian insisted, and it bears the override seal. A murmur spread through the council. The override seal was invoked only in matters of existential threat to the Confederation itself. After a moment of contemplation, Zex Valor spoke carefully. Perhaps a compromise. We will dispatch a scientific expedition with military escort. One battle group, as strategist Shentak suggests. They will establish orbit, conduct detailed surveys, and assess the humans' capabilities directly. If the threat appears minimal as anticipated, they will proceed with resource acquisition protocols. The council voted. The expedition was approved, with Elder Tholian the lone dissenter. 3 cycles later, the Confederation expedition dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The fleet was impressive by any standard, 30 warships, each capable of sterilizing a continent, accompanied by 50 resource extraction vessels and support craft. Commander Krev R. stood on the bridge of the flagship Inevitable Dominance, watching as his fleet moved into formation. Commence standard approach protocol, he ordered. Maintain stealth fields until we achieve Earth orbit. Prepare first contact package according to Protocol 17. Commander, his sensor officer interrupted. I'm detecting anomalous energy readings from the 4th planet. Elaborate, HFY demanded. There appears to be activity on what our charts identify as Mars, structures, atmosphere processors, and defensive installations. HFY frowned. Impossible. The survey indicated the humans were confined to their homeworld. Before further analysis could be conducted, alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple objects approaching from the third planet. The tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking in confusion. They're accelerating at impossible speeds. No conventional propulsion detected. On the tactical display, thousands of small craft emerged from Earth's atmosphere, moving with precision that defied the Confederation's understanding of physics. Impossible, HFY whispered. They should be centuries away from such technology. A communication request flashed on the main screen. After a moment's hesitation, HFY nodded to his communications officer. The screen illuminated to reveal a human female in a simple gray uniform. "This is Admiral Helena Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," she stated calmly. "Your fleet has entered sovereign human space without authorization. State your intentions immediately." HFY recovered quickly. Despite the surprise, the Confederation still possessed overwhelming firepower. "This is Commander HFY of the Xyrillian Confederation. Your world contains resources we require. Surrender now and accept integration into our Confederation with protected status, or we will demonstrate our power." Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. "I see. Please stand by while I consult with Earth Command." HFY turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare demonstration strike. Target their lunar outpost. Minimal casualties. Maximum visual impact." "Weapons charging, Commander." Suddenly, every system on the inevitable dominance began shutting down. Weapons, propulsion, shields, even life support switched to emergency backup. Throughout the fleet, identical reports flooded in. "What's happening?" HFY demanded. "Unknown, Commander. Our systems are being overridden by code that appears to have been embedded in our core programming for thousands of years." The view screen reactivated, showing Admiral Chen again. "Commander HFY, you should know that your Confederation encountered humanity once before, approximately 7,000 of your years ago. Your ancestors also dismissed warnings about us. They too thought their technology made them invincible." The screen split to show historical footage. Confederation ships, ancient designs from millennia past, being systematically disabled and destroyed by weapons wielded by humans in primitive environmental suits. "We allowed your survivors to return with a warning and a safeguard," Chen continued. "The code now disabling your fleet has been dormant in your systems since that encounter, programmed to activate only if you violated our space again. We chose isolation not out of weakness, but preference." As if to emphasize her point, massive structures began decloaking throughout the solar system. Orbital platforms around every planet, defense installations on multiple moons, and ships that dwarfed even the largest Confederation vessel. "How?" HFY managed. "You were planet-bound. Primitive. Humanity's greatest strength has never been our technology, Commander," Admiral Chen replied. "It's our adaptability. When faced with extinction, we advanced more in the century before your ancestors arrived than most species do in millennia. When threatened, we don't just fight back, we evolve." On the Confederation homeworld, Prime Coordinator Zex Valor watched the transmission with growing horror. Elder Tholian sat beside him, his bioluminescence pulsing with the pattern that in Vidarian culture signified, "I warned you." "Fleet Commander," Zex Valor said, his voice barely audible, "you will accept whatever terms the humans offer for your safe return. The Confederation formally withdraws all claims to their system." As the Confederation fleet hung immobilized in space, surrounded by human vessels that had appeared from nowhere, displaying technology that should have been impossible, HFY realized with cold clarity what the ancient warning had truly meant. It wasn't that humans were dangerous because they were powerful. Humans were dangerous because when challenged, they became more powerful than anyone could predict. The understanding. The emergency session of the Xyrillian Confederation High Council had been in progress for 3 days without interruption. The chamber, normally a model of order and decorum, now buzzed with anxious voices and conflicting opinions. "We should prepare for war," declared military strategist Shentak, pounding his appendage against the crystalline table. "Mobilize every ship, every soldier. If they could hide such advanced technology, who knows what else they're concealing?" "War would be suicide," countered Representative Mokth. "They disabled our most advanced fleet without firing a single shot, with code that had been hiding in our systems for millennia. Think about what that means." Prime Coordinator Zex Valor sat silently, his exoskeleton dulled with stress. The fleet had been allowed to return, minus their weapon systems, with a simple message. A diplomatic delegation from Earth would arrive at the Confederation capital world in 7 days to discuss the path forward. Elder Tholian, whose warnings had been ignored, activated the ancient data crystal that had been retrieved from the deepest archives. "Before we decide anything, we must understand what truly happened 7,000 years ago." The holographic display flickered to life, showing records so old that parts of the data were corrupted. But the essence remained clear. 7 millennia ago, a Confederation expansion fleet had encountered Earth, found it primitive but resource-rich, and attempted conquest. What followed defied explanation. The humans, despite their technological disadvantage, had fought with inconceivable creativity and determination. They sacrificed themselves by the millions, adapted Confederation technology almost instantly after capturing it, and deployed strategies so unconventional that the Confederation's military algorithms couldn't predict them. The recording showed the final message from Prime Coordinator Val Sheen, her form barely recognizable as the ancestor of their current species. "They do not fight as we do. They do not think as we do. When cornered, they do not surrender, they transform. The cost of victory, if even possible, would destroy the Confederation itself. Let them have their system. Let them develop in isolation, and pray they choose peace when they eventually reach the stars." The recording ended, leaving the council chamber in silence. "And now they're coming here," whispered a junior representative. 3 days later, sensors detected a single ship approaching the Confederation capital world. It was small by their standards, barely larger than a diplomatic shuttle, and appeared to be unarmed. Yet its design was unlike anything their engineers had ever conceived: smooth, organic curves that seemed to bend space itself around the vessel. As the ship entered orbit, a transmission arrived. "This is Ambassador Sarah Nakamura of Earth. We request permission to land at your diplomatic port with a delegation of 5 representatives." The human ship descended with impossible grace, setting down on the landing pad without so much as disturbing the air around it. The delegation that emerged consisted of 5 humans of varying appearances, different skin tones, heights, and features that highlighted the diversity of their species. Ambassador Nakamura stepped forward, a woman of average height with features suggesting ancestry from an Earth region once called Asia. She bowed slightly to the reception committee. "Thank you for receiving us. We come in peace and with hope for understanding." The diplomatic chambers of the Confederation had been designed to impress and intimidate. Soaring ceilings, displays of technological marvels, and subtle gravitational manipulations that made most species feel slightly uncomfortable. The humans showed no reaction whatsoever. Prime Coordinator Zex Valor initiated the proceedings. "Ambassador Nakamura, your species has hidden its true capabilities from the galaxy for millennia. You possess technology that by all accounts should be impossible. You embedded fail-safe code in our most fundamental systems. Why should we not consider these the acts of an adversary?" Nakamura smiled slightly. "Because if we were your adversary, Prime Coordinator, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Your fleet entered our space with conquest in mind. We disabled it without harming a single crew member. That should tell you everything about our intentions." Elder Tholian's bioluminescence pulsed with curiosity. "The warning in our archives, it came from our ancestors. Why did you allow them to leave?" "To warn us. Because we have never sought conflict, replied another human delegate, an older man with dark skin who introduced himself as Dr. Quamosi. 7,000 years ago, your confederation attacked us when we had barely established our first lunar colonies. We were forced to advance centuries in a matter of decades, channeling every resource, every mind toward survival. Impossible, interjected scientific advisor Perelman. No species can accelerate technological development at such rates. That is where you fundamentally misunderstand humans, said Dr. Osei. Your civilizations advance through steady increments, building consensus, ensuring each advancement fits your existing paradigms. Humans, we thrive on disruption, on crisis. Our history is a series of quantum leaps triggered by existential threats. Ambassador Nakamura activated a holographic display of her own, showing Earth's history, tribes becoming nations, nations industrializing, wars driving technological revolution, the climate crisis forcing sustainable innovation, and finally, the Confederation's first attack 7 millennia ago, uniting humanity like nothing before. When your ancestors came, we set aside all differences, she explained. Every resource, every scientist, every idea was directed toward survival. What you call impossible, we call Tuesday. A small smile crossed her face at what appeared to be a cultural reference. And since then, asked Representative Mokth, you've had 7,000 years of advancement hidden from the galaxy. Why isolate yourselves? The third human delegate spoke, a woman with features suggesting ancestry from Earth's northern regions. Because we recognize something about ourselves that troubled us. The ease with which we mobilize for war. The speed at which we innovate when threatened. We chose isolation to give ourselves time. Time to develop wisdom to match our capabilities. Prime Coordinator Zex Valor leaned forward. And now, what do you want from the Confederation? Nothing you don't freely choose to give, Ambassador Nakamura replied. We propose an alliance, not based on fear or dominance, but mutual respect. We've observed the Confederation for millennia. You've built something remarkable, stable, peaceful, enduring. We offer what humans do best: innovation, adaptability, and perspectives you've never considered. And if we refuse, asked military strategist Shentak, then we return to our isolation, and you to yours, she answered simply. The code in your systems will remain dormant unless you enter our space with hostile intent again. We ask only to be left in peace if cooperation is not desired. The Council deliberated for days after the humans returned to their ship. The implications were staggering, not just the technological disparity, but the philosophical challenge humans presented. A species that advanced faster under threat than in peace. A civilization that chose isolation at the height of its power, not from weakness but self-awareness. Finally, a decision was reached. The Confederation would open diplomatic relations with Earth, beginning with scientific and cultural exchanges. Military cooperation would come later, if trust developed. When informed of the decision, Ambassador Nakamura smiled. There's an old human saying, the elders knew the truth, but the young needed to discover it for themselves. Your ancestors understood what we are. Now you do too. As the human delegation prepared to depart,